Welcome to another exciting and educational episode on the Fauie Technology YouTube channel. Today I'm going to go over an introduction to OBS. OBS is the Open Broadcaster software. It is used for anything from recording videos for YouTube, streaming things for YouTube, Facebook, Twitch. Through this series, I am going to go through an introduction of OBS, how you configure different scenes, how you set up different sources. Eventually, we will go through things like how do we set up gaming so we can capture another screen, how do we put text overlays on, how do we use webcams, how do we use cameras like a PTZ optics camera or an NDI broadcast camera within OBS. But today I just want to kind of go over the initial setup of OBS and how we can set up a scene. So if we go to the OBS website here, obsproject.com, you can download the software. It is available for Windows, Mac, and Linux. I am most familiar with OBS on the Mac. I use it heavily for these kind of videos. I use it for broadcasting my church services, broadcasting conferences, broadcasting presentations at my kids' school. I've used it for a ton of different things. What I'm going to do here is go through an initial setup, but you'll see that I'm doing it on Windows. There's a lot of reasons I'm doing that. I know a lot of gamers are primarily focused on Windows. I teach a college course on programming that is half of the students are using Windows. So I'm doing a mix of OBS videos as well as programming videos. And so I'm going to kind of do it all on this Windows computer. Interestingly enough, in my opinion, I am recording this on my Mac using OBS, but I'll be demoing OBS on the Windows computer. And in later episodes, we'll talk about how I'm doing that. So for right now, I have downloaded OBS, and I will open OBS to set up. So this is what it looks like when you first open OBS. It is blank. We have some settings at the bottom for different scenes. Oh, they're behind my head. Let's get rid of my head. You don't need to see me. Goodbye, head. So here on this OBS in the lower left-hand corner, you will see this scenes setting. To the right of that, you'll see sources. And to the right of that, you'll have our audio mixer. This is where we can make sure our sound levels are right for whatever we're recording. To the right of that is how we transition between scenes. We have a couple of different cut or fade settings in here. We'll go over all of what these mean. Then on the right is kind of the controls for starting your stream or starting your recording. Right now, I'm recording my this video to my workstation, but most of the time I'll just go streaming live on YouTube or Facebook, etc. Studio mode is an interesting one, and you'll see why this is valuable. But the idea is here, now we have two panels. On the left, you have a preview panel, so you can set up your scene, you can move around elements, move around the sources within that scene, and then when you're done, you can transition it to your live program here on the right. But let's go back to regular single screen mode and just kind of get things set up. So what I want to do here is set up a scene with a few sources. Those scenes will be a webcam, and it will have my audio source from my microphone. So let's set it up. So we'll create a new scene. We'll call it just webcam scene. I will hit OK. And then under the sources, I have a bunch of different options. I'm going to click plus to add a new scene. So my webcam is it is a video capture device. You are going to have to see me again in a second, but from the other computer. So webcam, mine is a Logitech, I think it's a 930E or something like that. I will hit OK. Now I get this properties window where I can pick which device it is. Hey, I was almost right, the C930E. I can configure, I can do things like changing my brightness, contrast, all these picture things, which we can get into later. I'm going to use a device default settings for resolution and frames per second. I believe it is a 1080p HD camera. Resolution is set, frames per second video format. All these things are the default. We'll set these default. I don't really feel like flipping it. So I will hit OK. And now here I have my webcam. Let's see if I can make this thing bigger at the bottom, but I don't think, oh, maybe I can. Hey, look at that. So now we have webcam has our audio. It has an audio input as well, but I'm going to make sure that comes down. And of course I spelled Logitech wrong. So I'm going to go back to my source over here. I just right clicked on it. I'm going to hit properties. And how can I rename it? Right click. Is there a rename? Rename. So I'm going to go in here and make sure I have it set right. C, not Logitech. So it's named right, so I know what it is. In addition to that, let's say I wanted to write some code. So here I'm opening a piece of software calling it's Visual Studio Code. It's what I'm using for my C++ class. It can be anything you want. I'm going to add another source. Here it's going to be a window capture source. And let's set this to my Visual Studio Code window. I will hit OK. And another properties window to say, let's pick something. So in my window, I'm going to look through until I find Visual Studio Code. You'll see this code.exe. We should have the title as the name and capture cursor, all these things. So I'm going to hit OK. So now in this scene, I lied, it's not just the webcam, but it is my webcam and my Visual Studio Code. And let's rename that as well. So rename that to webcam and code. All right. So if I were doing a real video for this, I would I'm clicking in my window up at the top, and I'm picking that Visual Studio Code window, kind of just dragging it around to where I want it. We'll put it about right there. You'll see it resized it. Then, well, it's covering up my webcam. And y'all really want to see me because it might add value. No, I don't think it adds value. But anyway, that's okay. So I have my webcam here. If we look in this sources list, these are a ordered list. The things on top in the list will sit on, it's a stack of the video or a stack of the sources. So the webcam is at the bottom of the stack. That's why it's behind Visual Studio Code. So what I want to do is I want to move Visual Studio Code down in this list. You can see the move down arrow at the bottom. And now my webcam is on top. Well, that's great. But let's go and make another scene where it's really just the webcam. Just the webcam. And I hit OK. Okay, so all my stuff went away at the top. So now I can click on my sources again. And again, I'm going to find a video capture device. And we'll add an existing source. It's the same source on the other one, and it's the webcam. So I'll make that bigger so you can see my orange chair with my extra cables on it behind me, moving around to kind of center it. And let's figure out how we can crop this. So if I click, I'm clicking Alt and I'm dragging the corner so it just crops it to that. Now dragging this other side, you'll see that the lines turn green. That means we are cropping that source. On this one, I don't like this background, so let's add another color source for the background. We'll call this one gray. And we can go and we can select a color. So let's look at this gradient, and I'll pick a gray about there, and I'll hit OK. And I'll hit OK. So now I can take this square and I can make it bigger, 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 as big as I want. And again, since my camera disappeared, I'm going to take that Logitech. Man, I spelled it right. And I'm going to press the up arrow to move it on top of the stack. So now I have these two sources. These two scenes. So I can click back and forth, and it'll go back to the webcam and code scene. Let me shrink this down again so we can get more of the scene itself. And then go back to the webcam. You'll see it's doing a little fade between the two. Let's go over here and we'll change the duration of that fade. Right now it's at 300 milliseconds. That's pretty quick. One trick I've started doing recently is making a longer transition, because at my church, my house of worship, I have 2 different PTZ cameras, and I have to change the camera between scenes as well. So to do that, I don't want to kind of make everybody have whiplash, so I kind of transition the overall scene as I'm moving the camera, and it works out pretty well. So now when I click here, you'll see it's a much slower fade. So that's about a 2-second fade. Now the cool part about this studio mode, which I kind of hinted at earlier, is now I have 2 sides. I have this preview side on the left, and I have the program side on the right. Well, let's say I'm not happy with this. I kind of want to move this to the upper left-hand corner. So look at on the left, I can move it around, and it doesn't change anything on the right. So I can play with that and say, well, where do I really want it? Do I want it up here, kind of in the middle? That'd be weird. Maybe down the right-hand corner. I don't know where the YouTubers do this. I also want to kind of crop this one too, because you don't need to see the chair behind me and all my mess. So let's make that a little smaller, just to kind of tuck it away in the corner. And now I can hit this transition button in the middle, and it'll take whatever's in the preview side and move it to the program side. So if I were recording or if I were streaming, once I hit transition, that's what comes on my stream or in my recorded video. I will shrink that down. One thing I have noticed, I use a 4-year-old iMac at church for my stream, and if I'm in studio mode and I've got 2 of these things side by side, I kind of lose my frames per second. My streaming frames per second, you can see here at the bottom right hand corner right now, this is processing 60 frames a second. If I have preview mode and program up at the same time in studio mode, my frames per second in my stream drop in half. So I tend not to do studio mode much anymore, but again, it's really helpful when you're kind of playing around with the layout. Now, if I were streaming or recording and I move this on the screen, it would move on my stream. So I've mentioned streaming and recording a couple times. So if you look in the lower right-hand corner, you'll see you have some other controls. You have start recording and start streaming. When I hit start recording, let's see what happens. I'm now recording a video on this computer. It's on this Windows computer. So I've recorded for a couple of seconds. I will hit stop, and then let's see if I can find that. Is it in here? Videos 2020-02. Maybe that was it. Was that it? 20. That's right now. So then I'll have that little video that I just recorded, so I can kind of play that back as I need to. We'll talk at length about streaming. I have a couple of sessions planned coming forward. I know a big audience for this kind of work is gamers, is house of worship, teleconferences or conferences at a school or something like that. I'm going to get into recording and streaming so we can see how those controls work with various services like YouTube and Twitch, YouTube Gaming, Twitch. And then we'll talk about how we can start making money and all that kind of stuff. So for now, that was the first introduction. Leave me a comment. I think if I'm on YouTube, you got some subscribe and bells and stuff. Hit the subscribe. It really, really helps. Give me a good review. And there will be more.